Abraham Lincoln is revered as one of the greatest presidents in American history. Rising from humble beginnings on the frontier, Lincoln went on to lead the nation through the tumultuous years of the Civil War. His leadership helped preserve the Union and paved the way for the abolition of slavery. However, behind his storied political career, Lincoln struggled privately with depression and melancholy throughout much of his life. Even during his time as president, when the weight of the war and divisions within the country were immense, Lincoln grappled with periods of deep sadness and despair. Lincoln's struggles with mental health were largely kept out of the public eye during his lifetime. However, historians have documented his battles with depression through analyzing his letters, memoirs from those who knew him, and other first-hand accounts. Understanding Lincoln's private torment sheds new light on his character and offers inspiration for how, even amidst dark times, great leaders can persevere. This examination of Lincoln's depression provides insight into a complex man leading during complex times. His struggles impacted his personal outlook and leadership choices. Despite the darkness he battled, Lincoln left an enduring legacy as one of America's greatest presidents. His experience with depression demonstrates the toll leading takes, while also humanizing one of history's most admired figures. Lincoln's early life. Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809, in a one-room log cabin in Hardin County, Kentucky. From a young age, Lincoln faced difficulties and loss within his family. When he was only 9 years old, his mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, died, leaving him without a caring maternal figure during his formative years. This tragedy took a toll on Lincoln's mental health early on. Even as a child, those who knew Lincoln described him as having a melancholy temperament. While his early interest in learning and reading set him apart from other frontier boys, it likely also contributed to his tendency towards introspection and solemnness. He was known for getting lost in thought and experiencing bouts of deep melancholy. The losses he experienced in childhood, coupled with the harsh realities of frontier life, contributed to these early signs of Lincoln's lifelong struggles with depression. Lincoln's depression as president. Abraham Lincoln struggled with depression for much of his life. But the immense pressures of leading the country during the Civil War likely exacerbated his condition. As president, Lincoln was tasked with preserving the Union as several southern states seceded to form the Confederacy. This precipitated the bloodiest war in American history, resulting in over 600,000 casualties. Many of Lincoln's closest associates commented on his melancholy and sadness during his time as president. His wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, referred to his condition as a tendency to melancholy, and his close friend Joshua Speed said he observed a stale and moody aspect in Lincoln throughout the war. Many noted that the president seemed increasingly withdrawn, irritable, and restless. The extreme stress and responsibility of being a wartime president probably aggravated Lincoln's depressive tendencies. In addition to the military challenges, Lincoln also faced intense political pressure and criticism regarding his policies and leadership. Holding the country together against these centrifugal forces weighed heavily on him. The human toll and horrific bloodshed of the war likely also contributed to Lincoln's despondent state of mind as president. He was prone to bouts of deep, dark despair during this period. However, Lincoln's strong sense of duty and his wish to see the Union preserved allowed him to continue working tirelessly as president despite his inner turmoil. Impacts on his leadership. Abraham Lincoln's struggles with depression greatly influenced his leadership as president. His melancholy state humanized him to the public, allowing people to connect with him on a more personal level. Lincoln's condition made him intensely self-reflective and anxious about his performance as president. He constantly second-guessed his decisions and was deeply hurt by criticism and negative press. Lincoln took political attacks very personally. His sensitivity led him to avoid conflict and prefer compromise solutions. Despite his mental health challenges, Lincoln persevered and found ways to cope with the enormous pressures of leading the country through civil war. He used humor as an outlet and spent time with his sons to distract his mind when possible. He also found solace in poetry and plays that dealt with themes of mortality and despair. While Lincoln's depression caused him suffering, it also shaped his empathy, thoughtfulness, and connection with everyday Americans. His inner turmoil and grief enabled him to eloquently articulate the nation's pain during the Civil War. Overall, his personal struggles helped humanize him as a leader, rather than being seen as merely a distant politician. Coping mechanisms. Abraham Lincoln developed several strategies to help cope with his depression during his presidency. At a time when mental health was poorly understood, Lincoln relied heavily on close friends and confidants for support. One of Lincoln's closest friends was Joshua Speed, who he lived with for several years before becoming president. Lincoln would write candid letters to Speed, describing his melancholy as wide as the sea. Talking through his feelings with trusted friends like Speed likely offered Lincoln an outlet to express his inner turmoil. In addition to close friendships, Lincoln also sought solace in his family. Despite the stress of the Civil War, Lincoln was a devoted father who treasured spending time with his 4 sons. Escaping to the soldiers' home with his family offered a respite from the pressures of the White House. Lincoln also turned to creative outlets to process his emotions. Writing poetry was a lifelong hobby of Lincoln's, and he would often compose verse to work through grief and anguish. Lincoln also used humor as an outlet, delighting in telling jokes and funny stories to entertain friends and political colleagues. Though modern treatments were unavailable, Lincoln developed his own methods of self-care to persevere through depression. While he felt despair, Lincoln's internal strength and moral conviction helped him cope during difficult times as president. His example provides hope to others suffering from mental health issues. Possible causes of Lincoln's depression. Though we can never know for certain what caused Lincoln's struggles with depression, historians have proposed several possibilities based on his life experiences and family history. Genetic predisposition or childhood losses. Some modern psychiatrists believe Lincoln may have had a genetic predisposition for depression. His parents and siblings seem to have no mental health issues, but depression can still run in families, even if not everyone is affected. Lincoln also experienced a very difficult childhood, losing his mother at age 9. The early loss of his mother could have made him more vulnerable to depression later in life. Stress and trauma from the Civil War. Being president during the incredibly stressful years of the Civil War likely contributed significantly to Lincoln's depression. Leading the country through this existential crisis took an enormous emotional and psychological toll on him. In addition to the weight of responsibility, Lincoln was also exposed to the horrific direct impacts of war through visiting soldiers, attending hospitals, and reading casualty reports. This trauma and stress certainly did not help his mental health. Biochemical factors. While genetic and environmental factors likely contributed, some scientists also believe Lincoln's depression could have been exacerbated or triggered by biochemical imbalances or other changes in his brain. However, without access to modern neurological testing and imaging, we cannot know if biological factors played a role. Some also speculate that Lincoln may have had heavy metal poisoning, which can lead to neurological damage and mood disorders. But again, we simply do not have enough historical evidence to confirm any biological component to his illness. Treatments during Lincoln's time. In the mid-1800s, when Lincoln lived, the medical understanding of mental illness was primitive compared to our modern knowledge. At the time, depression was not widely recognized as a medical condition arising from chemical imbalances in the brain. Rather, it was seen as a personal flaw or weakness. There were no antidepressant medications available, as the first antidepressants were not developed until the 1950s. Treatments for mental illness focused on changing a patient's environment or behavior, not biochemistry. Some approaches Lincoln's doctors may have tried include hydrotherapy. Immersing patients in water tanks for extended periods was thought to have a calming effect. Different water temperatures could be used. Institutionalization. Mental hospitals and asylums were gaining popularity as places to send patients with challenging behaviors. However, conditions were often poor. Bloodletting and purging, removing blood and inducing vomiting diarrhea was a common treatment thought to calm psychiatric symptoms by reducing stimulation. Lifestyle changes. Doctors emphasized regimented schedules, productive work, and avoiding stresses and bad habits. A balanced lifestyle was encouraged. While well-intentioned, these primitive treatments did little to address the root biological causes of depression as we know them today. Lincoln likely would have benefited greatly from modern antidepressants and therapy to directly treat the brain's mood control centers. But despite the limited medical options of his time, Lincoln achieved greatness while coping with his chronic depression. Modern view of Lincoln's condition. The psychiatrists who have studied Abraham Lincoln's mental state agree that he likely suffered from severe depression and anxiety for much of his life. Based on modern diagnostic criteria, most experts believe Lincoln met the conditions for clinical depression, though the cause remains unknown. Lincoln experienced many periods of deep sadness, fear, despair, and emotional exhaustion throughout his life. He often spoke of his melancholy in letters to friends and acquaintances. The pressures of the presidency likely exacerbated his symptoms during the Civil War. Applying a modern understanding of depression to Lincoln's experiences provides insight into his inner suffering. With today's knowledge and treatments, Lincoln may have found relief through psychotherapy and medication. Though untreatable at the time, Lincoln's condition is better understood as an illness rather than a character flaw. Despite his struggles, Lincoln persevered and led the country through its darkest hour. His experience shows that with exceptional inner strength, it's possible to achieve greatness while battling depression. Lincoln's legacy is one of both suffering and transcendence. Lincoln's legacy and depression. Abraham Lincoln's struggles with depression, both before becoming president and during his time in office, have significantly shaped his legacy. His openness about his mental health challenges demonstrated courage and vulnerability at a time when such issues were not discussed publicly. Lincoln's depression has humanized him in the eyes of history. Far from being just an imposing mythical figure, knowing Lincoln's battles with melancholia reveals his empathy, compassion, and humanity. He stands as an example that even the great can be afflicted by mental illness. The 16th president paved the way for greater understanding of depression. His example has encouraged more open dialogue around psychological issues and reduced stigma. Lincoln has become an inspiration for many managing depression and other mental health conditions. They identify with his struggles and draw strength from how he persevered through dark times while leading the country. Lincoln's experience with depression has also furthered public awareness around mental health. It has motivated research into depression and potential factors impacting his condition, from genetic predisposition to the strain of a nation at war. This has provided insight into the origins and treatments of depressive disorders. Though he faced mental illness long before modern psychology and medicine, Lincoln's legacy continues advancing mental health issues from the shadows into the light. Conclusion. Abraham Lincoln faced immense challenges and responsibilities as president during one of the most difficult times in American history. Though he suffered from chronic depression, he persevered and led the country through the Civil War, reunited the nation, and paved the way for the abolition of slavery. Lincoln's struggles with mental health demonstrate that even the most accomplished leaders can suffer from depression. His experience shows that with proper support and coping strategies, people can still thrive and achieve greatness despite their condition. Lincoln found solace through humor, poetry, spending time with family, and channeling his melancholy into doing good for others. Though medicine and mental health care have advanced since Lincoln's era, depression remains common today for public figures and everyday people alike. Lincoln's example provides inspiration to stay resilient when facing adversity. His life and legacy prove that while depression cannot be cured, it need not prevent someone from living a meaningful, purposeful, and impactful life. Lincoln turned his personal struggles into strength, compassion, and wisdom that steered America through its darkest hour. Lincoln's story offers hope to the millions who grapple with mental health issues even now. His courage and honesty about his suffering helped remove stigma during the 1860s. Today it reminds us that even amidst depression's darkness, the light of hope and human goodness can still prevail. If Lincoln could achieve so much while carrying this burden, what more can we aspire to in our own lives and careers with the benefit of modern medicine and understanding? Rather than be ashamed of depression, we can honor Lincoln's memory by bringing it into the light. Thank you for watching this video on Abraham Lincoln's struggle with mental health. I hope you found it helpful and informative. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might benefit from it. And if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to The Anxious Resistance, where we explore various topics related to mental health and well-being. Your support means a lot to us and helps us spread awareness and education. Until next time, stay safe and take care of yourself.